Okay, so a couple things. So I did get some new printer ink, which is awesome because look, now I can actually read what it says. That's awesome. Maybe I can read better. But here's the other deal: is I actually read through it a couple times and tried to get better at it. But aside from that, here's the thing: is that I also noticed that I need to elaborate on some of these things because I was doing a 10,000 foot overview on some of this stuff, just given the details of the big stuff. Because I need to get into some of the details. So I'm going to create another after I get done with this book, and I may do some elaboration on some of this stuff as I'm going through it. But I'm going to create a playlist called Trigger Warning Trauma, which is because I want to go into some of the details of some of these things that have happened to me. But the deal is this: they are traumatic. Now, of course, looking back at them and the way I tell the story, it's kind of funny. Wasn't funny at the time, but it may be a trigger for somebody. Things like when my dad beat me with a shovel, like what happened when I fell out of the tree and all the details that happened there. And then for any of my ex-wives that stumble on this, just know this isn't to say that they were bad people. Matter of fact, here's the thing is that I pushed each one of them away because I really believed they could do better. And they all did. Matter of fact, I prayed for every single one of them to find the husband of their dreams. And they're all remarried and living happily ever after. And they probably don't even think about me from time to time. But anyway, if I do have one ex-stalker that I love them all. When I say one ex-stalker, I mean 100 ex-stalkers. But here's my deal: is I'm not calling out any names, but if it is factual evidence that can be found in the public anyway. I'm not going to mention names. I might just say my first wife, my second wife, my third wife. Well, go do an OCSN on Wade Quinton, and you'll see who those people are, if you so care to. Who cares? I may use pictures of them. Guess what? You gave me your consent when you took the picture with me, so there's your consent. And again, I'm not using this to make money. I'm just using it to tell my story, because what I want to do is, in every single one of those examples, I mean, the Lord sent me those people on purpose. And every friend that I have and every co-writer that I have, by the way, on music and so forth, I believe you're putting my life on purpose. And I will be bringing up some of those details. Maybe, who knows, maybe one of those songs will take off and you'll be rich just by proxy. But anyway, so let's get started. We did First Impression. I had to do that in 2 chapters. I'm going to do Starting Over in Oklahoma, and then The Matrix is the next one. And The Matrix is kind of long, so I'll probably have to chop that up a little bit. So let's start. Free from Tyranny. Here we go. And as I mentioned, after high school, I wanted to escape from living under my parents' roof and start working towards independence. The best choice at the time was the Navy. It was a good choice, of course, and I quit selling drugs, and I did my active duty time as a CB mechanic, and then I moved to Arizona as a reservist. I was planning to marry my high school sweetheart, who went with me to Arizona, but her dad hated me because he didn't want his daughter marrying a rebel child. I was the lawn boy in his eyes, which I was. That's how I met her, was mowing her lawn. When I met her, we were just 2 different class levels. He didn't recognize the fact that this lawn boy had started his own business all by himself at 13 years old and made a business so fruitful that his own father quit his day job to make more money working with me. And he was one of the top sales guys. He was 4th in the nation at the time at Jacobson Homelight. He moved from Philip Morris to Jacobson Homelight, which is how I had all this lawn equipment. But see, I want to get into some of those details about, I just did the brush over on this, but there's so much detail in there. But there's some trauma in it, so I'm going to put it under trigger warning trauma. But anyway, I digress. Her father really decided he didn't like me when we got pregnant. We got in a yelling match because he made some idle threats concerning my life. And I want to go into that story too, where I almost beat him to death on the side of the road, because it's kind of funny now, but it wasn't funny at the time, because I'm really not the guy you want to threaten. You just want to kill me from a distance. I won't mention any names that recently got killed like that, but yeah, you don't want to just come up and go, I'm going to kill you. I'll be like, oh, okay. Alrighty then. Guess what? We're all going to die anyway. You can just wait and we'll get there. Anyway, here we go. So we got in this yelling match because he did some idle threats concerning my life. As I understand it today, I'm a father too, but at the time I didn't understand why he was acting the way he was towards me. All of this made me the bad guy, even more so, which was the plan. He convinced her that we should separate, and he'd hoped that I wouldn't be able to resolve our relationship. I went to live with my mother, who had moved to Virginia while the dust settled. 6 months later, on the very day my son was born in Arizona, I was drunk, I was out riding a four-wheeler, and I smashed my face into a pole at 35 miles an hour. And if I wouldn't have hit that pole, I would have drove off a 30-foot cliff into a dry creek bank full of jagged rocks. And here's the deal. I want to elaborate so much on that because there's so much more detail here, like how I called 911 and all that, because I'm way out in the woods. And then I have some pictures, of course, me on the gurney, me with my mouth wired shut, all that good stuff. Anyway, the good news is it was this event that helped me clear the air, and I was able to move back to Arizona, reunite with my soon-to-be wife, and marry the mother of my firstborn child and high school sweetheart. And there's so much more to that story, and it's kind of... Anyway, I'll just continue, and then I'll do the brush-ups later, like I said, and trigger warning trauma. Anyway, once I recovered from my jaw fiasco, I made it back to Arizona, and I started a hauling and tree service business with my dad and worked it until I was about 21 years old. I was making great money, working on an average 3 or 4 days a week, trimming palm trees, mowing, landscaping, hauling, service, etc. All the while, I was an active reservist going to Navy drill once a month in Phoenix. By this time, it's 1990, end of 1990, the beginning of 1991, and Desert Storm erupts in the Middle East. My unit was activated, and I was given notice that I'll be shipping out to the Gulf War in 2 weeks. I'm 21 years old. I'm a Navy CB. So we're the second one in. It goes SEALs, CBs to set up the base and everything. Then the Marines come in. So we build, we fight. We work, we play. Ooh, remember us. We go away. Okay, I was also the cadence caller. And anyway, here we go. I'm 21 years old. I'm a Navy CB, but I'm a warrior who loves nothing more than a good fight. I notify my family of the good news that I'm going to war. And then understand, I didn't like myself. I was looking for death this whole time. That's why I did crazy stuff like climb an 80-foot palm tree and go, "Gah." I was just like, I thought I was Superman back then too. I didn't even think I could be hurt. And of course, that's even after I smashed my face into a pole, right? And it didn't even knock me out. It just made me upset. That's why I want to tell that whole story, because it's kind of funny. But anyway, so my mother flies in from Virginia to see me before I ship out, as it is war and I'm going, and I could die over there. Of course, at 21 years old, I was invincible. I didn't think or even consider death as an option at all, even after having my face smashed into a pole. At the same time, my thought was, if I were to die over there, my family will be taken care of, and what an honorable way to leave the earth. At this point, my business was doing well. I had jobs backed up to the very Friday prior to the Monday I was going to ship out. Friday comes, and I'm doing my very last job before the weekend, and I was looking forward to spending time with my family. I was trimming a 45-foot palm tree, the very first tree of 7, and it was the smallest one. The other ones were 75, 80 feet. This one was 45 feet, but it's one of those big, like, I think it's called a royal palm, something like that. I can't even remember. Anyway, I was in a hurry. It's 120 degrees out. The tree was a large palm tree that required 2 harnesses connect together, because it was like, instead of those little skinny ones, it was one of those big round ones. And so anyway, I put 2 harnesses together. I climbed the tree. I trimmed the entire tree out, and I looked down at my buddy who was working with me, and I say, "Hey, man, any more need to come off?" And he says, "Get that one right above your head." And so I trimmed the whole tree, and I'm shimmying around the tree the whole time. And there's one more palm frond hanging over my head that I can't see because I got a hat on like this. I got my cowboy hat on. And so he says, "Get the one right above your head." And I'm like, I'll look up. And anyway, so I lower my chainsaw. I whip out my handsaw that's tethered to my wrist. I reach up like this, and I have to go up like this. And so my harness loosens, and I grab the palm frond and I cut it. And I got my saw in one hand, I got the palm frond in the other, and I'm going back to get in my cradle to hold me. I make the cut. I see my harness strap fall, because for whatever reason, I guess it had gotten loose on the other end, and I see it fall, but this is happening so fast. As I'm going back and I'm starting to go, oh my goodness, and my brain's doing high math calculations, and I'm thinking my spikes are stuck in the tree, that I'm going to be stuck upside down like this. But I dropped everything in my hands. I grabbed the tree like this, and the palm frond trash falls off in my hand, and now I'm going backwards. And I'm like, oh my God. So I just kicked my feet out. Anyway, so my harness clip failed, and I fell 45 feet to the ground. I break both my legs. My left ankle shattered. My pelvis is broken in 4 places. My hand saw cracked me in the head right here, which I'll show you a picture of me in the hospital. And it split my head wide open. I'm broken. I'm bleeding. I'm laying on the ground in severe pain. And I tried to get up. I'm like, oh my God. Anyway, that's what I want to get into, that whole trauma experience of what happened that day and all the things that are set up that were just mind-blowing crazy, that it wasn't just coincidence. Like, the Lord allowed it. Anyway, I'm an atheist at the time too, by the way. I was in the hospital for 17 days, and I was confined to a wheelchair for a year and a half because of the extreme breaks in my legs. I had 2 plates in my right leg. I had pins and needles and all kinds of good stuff in my heel. The good news was, at least my family was already in town. Obviously, I didn't get to ship out, and I'll never forget the call to my commanding officer to tell him why I was AWOL. He was not happy, and neither was I. He said, "Where the hell are you? And what the hell are you doing?" Sorry, it kind of reminds me of my dad. Anyway, I said, "Sir, I was in an accident on my very last job, and I've been in the hospital, and I'm still in the hospital." And he's like, "You better be in the hospital. Which hospital are you in? And what room are you in? I'm coming to see you right now." He barked a few more orders and curse words and said he's on his way to see me. He was there in no time. He gets to my room and he says, "You know, Quentin, you could have just been crazy to get out of the Navy. You certainly qualify." I said, "Funny. I really wanted to go to war for multiple reasons, and now I'm at war spiritually. So, hey, I got my wish." Anyway, as you can imagine, this turned my world upside down. I was now out of a job, out of the Navy, and completely dependent on my wife and family for support. I was forced to sell all of my tree service equipment, my truck, my tools, just to be able to pay bills. And I eventually decided to move back to Oklahoma so that I could go back to school as a Cherokee Indian. And I knew that they would help me because I was also disabled. And as an Indian, I have free health care in Oklahoma. And I wouldn't be trimming palm trees anymore, or any trees for that matter, which is not true because I later started a tree service business because he's crazy. That's why. Anyway, we had yard sales on the weekends to sell off my equipment. I sold my truck and trailers as we filed for food stamps, and we were approved. And I hated it, but I was thankful it was available. I'm not one to accept handouts. I'm normally the one handing things out instead. We were making it through, but money was tight and times were tough. Since I was home taking care of my son, my wife and I decided to buy me a cheap guitar and a Mel Bay songbook with George Strait songs, with the chord changes printed. I already knew every George Strait song by heart as far as the lyrics were concerned, and I taught myself to play guitar so I could play and sing. It helped me pass time. It was good entertainment for me and my son, who I was raising at home since I couldn't walk at the time, and we couldn't afford daycare or move. And then here's all the notes of the stuff that I was like, man, you need to elaborate on all this stuff, which I'll do later. I'm going to go ahead and continue with starting over in Oklahoma. Let's see how many minutes we got here. 15. Okay, let's just do a few more because this is a long chapter. Starting over in Oklahoma. We were forced to sell everything we had, and I ended up moving back to Oklahoma to move in with my dad, who had also moved back to Oklahoma by this time. I wasn't looking forward to moving in with my dad, but I had no other choice at the time. I was recovering and working on a plan for the future, as I wasn't going to be in the tree service business anymore. And I want to elaborate on that because really that was one of the greatest times. We lived on Ten Color Lake. Dad was retired, and he made me go fishing every day. I was in a wheelchair with 2 broken legs, and he'd make me go out and run the trolling motor with my broke legs. Can't make that. You can't make it up. I'm telling you, it's just the way it was. Hey, run that thing right there. Anyway, but man, I caught more fish, and you know what's funny about it? Sorry, I'm on a sidetrack. Is I caught more fish, so many fish, and we went fishing so often, so long, that I got tired of fishing, and I'm a fisherman. Anyway, my wife went to work at Sally's Beauty Supply, making decent money, and I enrolled in an accredited technical school to learn computer programming. It was a 9-month course that provides an associate's degree in computer programming. When I graduated, I was still in a full leg cast on my right leg. After graduation, I started my first career at a software company in Tulsa as a technical analyst, providing support for a proprietary CMMS solution, computerized maintenance management solution software. It was a great job. I enjoyed what I was doing, and I was learning so many technologies, and technology was exploding. I felt like I was solving the problems of the world, one problem at a time, or at least that was my motto. My guitar playing was getting better, and I was progressing as a singer. I had the itch to start playing music, so I started a band and started playing at the local Tulsa country music circuit on the weekends, honky-tonks, special events, and wherever they'd let me play, all the while working at the software company as an analyst, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. I made some connections in the music industry, and I started doing some vocal track work and local studio, which landed me my first music management deal. It was nothing big, but it made me think, hey, I might be able to do this for a living. I'd only worked at my new job about 9 months when I decided to quit the company and go to Nashville and see if I could make it in the business. My wife was encouraging me, and she said, well, at least you can try, and if it doesn't work out, come back and go back to work at the software company. As I told them, I was just going to go for 6 months. I'd saved up some money. My buddy was going to go with me. Anyway, I'll just say moving to Nashville for 6 months was a life-changing event. I made some great connections. I had an extreme blast. I wrote and recorded some great songs with some of the best in the business. My first CD had some of the best Nashville players playing on it. George Strait's drummer, John Michael Montgomery's guitar player, and the list goes on. It's on the CD label if you can find it. My first release, Back to the Farm. For decades, I was in what I refer to as autopilot mode, bouncing back and forth from the software company I'd left to chase my dreams of being a country music artist. 7 years had flown by. So much had happened, both good and bad. I was working as normal and progressing at my company. I was promoted multiple times, and I was making decent money supporting my family and playing music on the weekends. I was blessed to have met some great musicians who I had the pleasure of entertaining some great venues and shows. My first band, Straight Country. My second band, High Strung. My third band, Wild Horse One, I call them. And then my fourth band, Wild Horse Two. And then, of course, I had Crying Out Loud. I had a bunch of different ones in there. Wild Ride. And then, of course, Outlaw Sun was my last one. Looking back at it now, it all seems like it was a dream. And it was. I was living the dream. By this time in life, I was a full-blown raging alcoholic. I was smoking weed every day, and I'd found out about the new drug called methamphetamine. Not only hooked on it, I was back to selling drugs, because if I sold drugs, I could do my drugs for free. But of course, the cost of doing drugs isn't just financial. 10 years later, I'm a seasoned professional musician in a great band that's playing all the big venues within driving distance of Tulsa. At the same time, I'm a professional software analyst, trainer, and installer. I'm selling drugs. I'm playing music on the weekends. I'm selling my music. And I'm having a miserable blast, or at least it looked like I was. I remember lying to my wife about being up all night and the subtle changes that came with being an addict. What was crazy is that I was excelling at work and in music. I made great money and extra money from playing gigs, selling merchandise, selling drugs. And I would do side jobs, like I would build a fence for somebody, or I would take out trees, all kinds of different things. I wasn't doing badly. I was doing badly, but it looked like everything was going my way from the outside. On the inside, there was turmoil and destruction. I was living the dream and living a lie the whole time, and this is why I hated myself. I was hiding my drug addiction as best I could, but it was getting worse and worse over time. How my first wife, or any of my wives for that matter, put up with me for so long, I'll never know. So I'll leave it there, and then we've got this next little chapter here. But anyway, there's so much more to elaborate on everything that I told you there. Like, for example, Sally Beauty Supply is where my first wife met my second lead guitar player. Like, I wasn't good enough for him at the time they met me. He had me out for his band to sit in a couple times. And when I was in a full leg cast, I remember playing and practicing with Straight Country. In a full leg cast, we played some gigs and stuff. But anyway, I hope that you're hanging in there with me. This is going to get better, because this is where the good stuff starts, when he's a full-blown, worthless piece of crap. And the Lord still uses them. And again, I'm still an atheist at this point in time, but I will tie all this together, how the Lord said, you know what? I chose this guy. I made him this way from the beginning. And anyway, to all my new people out there, appreciate you. I'll try to reply to comments that I can. And if there's any rude ones, I'm just going to give you love back. But no, I do love you, and I hope you're doing well.